Hello. All right, so I guess we're recording now, finally. So today I want to talk about Sass, which is an FLA. Everybody remember what an FLA is? A four-letter acronym. This stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. And there are two versions of Sass. One of them is uses the old syntax, which they talk about the differences here. But they made a newer version called SCSS, which is short for Sassy CSS. And this one is a lot easier to understand because out of the box, normal CSS is in that same, is syntactically correct, meaning that I can just start with regular CSS, which you all know, and it compiles fine in to some special syntax, and it takes that code and generates the style sheets for you automatically. And so it allows us to do all kinds of fun stuff like having variables in our style sheets. And so we'll play around with this. Rails has this built into its asset pipeline now. And if you look at the generated style sheets, you'll see that, like when I scaffolded the articles, it created a .css with a .scss extension. And the way the pipeline reads this is from right to left. So and that generates CSS, which is then distributed to the browser, because the browser cannot read Sassy CSS style sheets directly. They can only read CSS. So this program is invoked during the asset compilation. Okay, so if I want, this is my styles.css that I never changed. I'm going to rename this guy to add the extension .scss on the end of it. And if I don't do that, then I can't write Sassy CSS in my file. It won't compile it correctly. So I'm going to rename that. So now now it's all set up. Rails will automatically see that extension and look for variables and some of the syntactic style sheets stuff. So there's a lot of things. You can go to sass-lang.com, and this is what defines the language, and they have some tutorials and documentation is all here. This is an example where we're creating a variable called blue that we're assigning a standard hex 6-digit color to, and when it outputs it, it generates this type of CSS. So this code here generates this CSS over here on the right, just to give you an idea back and forth. So we'll play with that a little bit in our existing app here. So let's go to my recipes, and let's play with some of these things. What you can do is, because we're using this newer style, we can build up Sassy CSS as we learn it, because we can just write normal CSS in here and this is going to work fine, right? As you see, even though I changed the name of my style sheet, everything looks the same. It didn't do anything because I don't have any actual Sass in the code yet. So let's instead of looking at this, I'm going to look at the actual style sheet CSS file, and we'll just keep reloading this file to show you the changes that's going to happen. All right. Now, one of the things right off the bat that has changed from the actual file, notice there it has this created by the free HTML5 templates, and it has a reset comment. If I look at that sheet, though, look at all these other comments that have been added for you. This is done by the Sassy compiler. It says on line 5, this stuff comes from line 5 of this style sheet. So you can trace it back and find it exactly where it is. So this here is on line 26. It adds those comments for you automatically. So I don't remember. In production, it compiles all the style sheets into one style sheet. So, and then it, it uglifies it and takes out all this. It probably will take out the comments. I don't know for sure. All right, so let's play with one of the first fun things is to play with some variables. So to define a variable in Sass, let's just put a comment so we can say variables. All right, and to define a variable, I give it a $, which is a little different, and I name my variable. So my variable has to be all one word or with underscores, and so I might say primary color and colon, and then I can give it a standard CSS number, 6-digit number. So one of these things down here, this is the nav background. I'm going to take this color that's already defined in my style sheet and put it into this variable here. And I end the statement with a semicolon, just like normal CSS. All right. Once this is defined, I can use this variable now throughout my code instead of this number here. Now, what's the use of having these variables like this? Change it once, it changes it throughout the entire file. All right. That's the whole reason we use variables in programming in the first place. So if I put these at the top, I can have all kinds of different variables, and I can change these colors easily here. So now I'm going to search through my code here and replace this with the $ primary color, and RubyMine automatically sees this now as a Sass file, does some auto-completion on variables that I've already defined. Isn't that cool? So the main nav background is going to be that. There's another one, the footer area. I'm going to change that to primary $ primary color. And so both of those are now using this top color here. So let's go see what happens in the actual code when I reload. When I reload my style sheet, notice at the top you don't see the actual variable here, right? I put the comment, which is a standard CSS comment, but it doesn't do anything else because that's not standard CSS, right? So it compiles that out. But if I search for that string, you see that it gets replaced automatically in the code just where it was. So from the browser's perspective, nothing has changed. This Sass is only for the developer. It's not for the browsers. It's for to make my code easier to read, right? It's just that's pure and simple, just for me. So those are the two places in the code that I see it, and it just replaced it there. All right, isn't that great? Cool stuff. All right, so variables I can replace. I can go pixels. I can replace pixels as well.
So you do colons.
Yes. So just like I could say my, let's see if I have any, here's a height and the width, all right? Let's say I set this to table width, and I can set that to 325 pixels. And my table height is going to be 65 pixels. All right? So, and then I would replace these values. These are now hard-coded values, right? I'm going to replace those with the variable names of table height and table width. So when I reload my page again, it doesn't look any different, right? But I now have one place to change this in my code. So if I want to change my height, I can just say, I really need this to be 70 pixels. I change it one place, and these variables then don't have to change. So I reload that, now it changes to 70. See that? I can also do some calculations in here. Let's say I want the width to be, the height and the width to be proportionally somehow, okay, somehow proportional. So I want the height to be a fourth of the width. Okay, I don't know why I would do that, but I can do mathematics in the code right here, and instead of saying this, I can actually do a variable, have it related to my table height, and I can divide that by 4. Okay, so this is standard kind of math syntax in programming. That will do a calculation and stuff the right value into my table height. Yes? Probably, yeah, thank you. That would not work so good. All right, table width divided by 4. So what is this going to be? About something, right? It does 81.25 pixels. It does the calculation, and it keeps it in the original value, point value. So if I had points in here, it would do points. If I had pixels, it leaves it as pixels. If I have M's, it'll do M calculations, so it doesn't matter. Isn't that cool? Cool stuff, man. Any questions on this so far?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So the variable must be on the top. You cannot do bottom, right? Everything has to be on top.
Well, just like in programming, I have to have a variable defined before I can use it.
Oh, okay.
So it has to be defined before I can use it. So if I put these on the bottom, I don't think it's going to compile correctly. Okay?
You could theoretically put them lower, but they still have to be above where you're using.
Right. Yeah, they have to be above. So it just makes sense to put them all at the top. And the other reason is when I open a file for the first time, it starts me at the top. And if I have everything in variables, I never have to scroll through and find all this stuff down here. It's always right at the top. So I would probably want to, fix all of these kind of values to have some variable instead. So notice how this width here, 940, is used a lot of places. See the 940, 940, 940? So let's set and that is what do we call that? Probably the screen width, all right? So let's pick that as a screen width. Or layout width, maybe. And that's going to be 940 pixels. So now I can search for this value and replace it with layout width. So there's a way to search and replace.
Cancel the search. And then go up to the A, where it has a magnifying glass in the name. Over.
All right. So I'm going to search for this. No, I'm going to search for 940 pixels. I'm going to replace it with layout width, and I'm going to replace them all, and they're all gone. And then obviously, right, I've replaced this one. It's got to be back to my 940 pixels. All right, good. You guys are awake this morning. That's good. So now everywhere where 940 used to be is my variable. And if I want to change my width, I do it in one place. See how many times it's being used? So I'll go back and reload my page. Everything is back here in the 940 pixels. So if I want to, and I probably shouldn't have closed my other page. Let's go back to my recipes and see an actual change now. So here you can see the layout that's probably 940 pixels here. If I change this to say 1240, I change it in one place. I reload my style sheet, and now 1240 is going to be everywhere. And if I look at the actual page and reload that, my width is now bigger. Isn't that great? Awesome stuff. So variables are probably the first thing that I would use in Sass. And you can, that's one nice thing about this. The rest of the code is just normal CSS. I know how to write that. I don't have to change anything to start using some of these nice features. Later on, as you learn more and more Sass, you can just add stuff to this. All right, any other questions?
Do the // with a comment?
Yes.
Strip that variables out?
Yes. So here is an example where this is a standard CSS comment that will show up in the ending style sheet that's shipped out to the browser. This will not. This will be stripped out by the pre-compiler. So if I reload this guy, you notice the variables got stripped out. Okay? So you can put in things that you don't want the public to see as // variables here. I mean // comments. All right. So let's do some nesting, which is really a nice system here. And I'm just going to make up some style sheets here to show what it works like. But if I had a class called red, inside of that, I could set the color red. Okay? And then what I might have in a style sheet would be, let's say I want to have a red that works off of a paragraph tag. So for that, I'd have to say color red again, right? And then I might add a background color of white, something like that. I'm going to add some additional styles to this red class that has an embedded paragraph inside of it. Yes. All right. So with Sass, I don't have to redefine all of this because this is kind of redundant, right? Most of the time, a paragraph inside of a red, I want it to inherit all of this stuff. So instead of doing that, I can, inside of my red class, I can just start defining a new class and put my background color in there and put, let's add a border, 1 pixel solid red, just to be different. So now this is called a nested style, right? And we'll show what this actually produces, because this is not standard CSS, right? That's just not standard. That's not going to work if I ship that to the browser directly. It should compile it correctly. So let's look at it and see. It actually generated those two style sheets for me. But implicitly in the code, I can tell right away that my P is already going to inherit the color red from my red class. And it just makes sense to nest these together because that's really what you're doing here. Right? I'm really nesting. I want this to inherit all of this color red here and just add some additional style sheets. So it does the right classes for me just based on the nesting. Any questions on that? I'm not using it in my code, in my actual page. No. So let's add another level. Let's say I want an A tag in here. I want to style an A tag and change the border of this guy to be 1 pixel solid blue. All right, so let's see what it looks like in my style sheet. It adds a third style that adds the additional piece for me. All right, so it says that's a red class with a P embedded in it, with an A embedded within the P. All right, that's the way that works. It is when you do the hovers and the all of those kind of things.
Except for if you'd done dot red P and didn't put color in dot red space P, it still would have inherited the red color because.
Yeah, but then it applies some new styles on top of that. So.
Right, but if you'd done dot red space P and put, if you'd broken it out and not used Sass to create it, you would have gotten the same effect.
Yeah, but you would have had to write all 3 of these.
Well, you're kind of writing all 3 of them.
I'm not. I mean, this just makes sense more syntactically, I think. This is the way CSS should have been written in the first place, with variables and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is easier to understand than 3 different lines like this, in my opinion. All right. So we did some calculations. Let's do some more calculations. Let's say I want my background color to be my primary color, but I want it to be a little bit lighter. Okay, so I can say I want this to be my primary color. And if I reload this, now it's going to have my 31.5FA9. All right, but let's say I want this to be a little bit lighter than this color. This color is, this is my blue here. This is my color here. RubyMine shows that to me. So I want that to be a little bit lighter. So they have some functions built into the Sassy CSS that let me change some of the colors. Let's say I want to lighten this color. So that's nice. I can say lighten as a method. I want to lighten the primary color, and by some percentage. Let's say I want to lighten it by 20%. All right? So during the compilation phase, this is going to calculate 20% lighter of 31F, this blue, and it should give me a lighter blue. Let's see if I'm curious if RubyMine does this automatically. It does look like it is a little blue lighter. No, it's not. It's my. So they don't do that automatically. So when I compile it, now my background color is this 6CF, and as we get higher in color, that gets whiter, right? So that is there, but the original 31F is somewhere down here. Here it is. Is still set there. So I can lighten a color. I can conversely darken a color. So instead of having this as blue, I can say I want to darken my original primary color by 40%. All right? And it takes it and makes it less of a number, right? As we're approaching 0, that becomes black. All right? Isn't that sweet? I can also say I want to change this to be a grayscale instead. So there's another function, grayscale, and I want to take my primary color and convert it to a grayscale. So whatever level of brightness it is now, it's going to be a gray level. So it changes it to 60, 60, 60. Obviously, any number that's repeated becomes grayscale. Everybody realize that? In the color spectrum, red, green, and blue all being the same intensity becomes some level of gray from black to white. So it calculates out the closest intensity value here and creates this 60. Isn't that cool? You guys are not appreciating this. All right, any other questions on this?
Can you do like functions or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, Sass has obviously already integrated into Rails, but how can you incorporate this into other languages, like using it on a PHP server or a Microsoft server or?
Well, a little outside the scope of a Rails class here, but what you can do is there are some command line programs that will compile a Sass file into CSS. And if you incorporate that into your deploy cycle, you run this compile and you ship up the compiled Sass file up to your server, and then this is just integrated into the Rails pipeline.
Right,
But
so there is
yeah, you can do it.
to use Sass on other servers.
Yes. There's some command line programs, and I don't have them offhand. Yeah.
Variable would be like accent color as a variable at the top, and then say lighten your primary color in that as well. Or
Yeah. Any variable I want, you're saying something like this is going to be red. And then I can say, doesn't matter.
instead of red, could you say lighten primary color like up there in your
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I could say lighten primary color by 20%. Sure. All right. So I can do the same thing with font families. Let's create a variable that has my font system in it. So I can say Helvetica is going to be Helvetica N-E-U-E. I can never get this right. N-E-U-E, yeah. And then followed by an Arial, followed by Helvetica, followed by Free Sans, followed by Liberation Sans, followed by whatever. And then at the end we have to have a sans serif or a serif at the end, right? Sans serif. So this is my font family in a variable. So I could also add that to my red class if I wanted to. And I could just say font family Helvetica. So once again, I have one variable that's going to be replaced throughout all of my code. Well, that was weird. So let's look at what it looks like here. So it puts the font family right in there just like a variable. All right, let's see if I have an error and see if I can show an error and see if I actually get something here.
No, leave off a parenthesis.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Here's the error. I just didn't look far enough down. It says this is an error, so we can search for this Sass syntax error, invalid CSS after this value, expected a parenthesis. So you can read and it tells you what file it's in. So if you get an error, that's what you're going to get back. You're going to actually show you an error. Pardon me?
Can you reload the actual website?
Yep, and you'd see the error here too. So that's probably easier to see. All right, so it does print out errors if we have an error. Any questions? All right, we can also do what they call a MixIn, which is like a method. And I can define a method here, and I use the keyword MixIn. and I can name it something like this. I want it to be called blue text, and inside of this I'm going to set my color to be some level of blue. My font family is going to be Helvetica, Arial, Sans Serif. Font size is going to be 20 pixels. Font variant maybe be small caps. All right. So this is a method, and just like in any programming language, if I define a method, it doesn't do anything until I use the method. Right. This is like we're setting aside code to be used later on. It's a subroutine, a method, a function, whatever you want to call it. But all it did was define some code, and I have to actually invoke that somehow. So I might change that in my, have a new style here, like maybe I want my product title to use this type of set of code. And I just, at that point, I can say include blue text. So this is how I call the method. Okay, I'm calling the method this MixIn, this blue text. So the name of the method is defined. I call it by saying include blue text. So when I did that, now I have a product title. It includes all of the styles that were in that method into this style. So if I change something in my blue text, I don't know, what border? 1 pixel solid blue. Yes, we'll get to that. So I add one thing in my method, and it adds it to all the places where that method was called. So again, this is a way of drying up your code and having methods instead of hard coding all of this every time I need to make sure that the font is in the right place. All right, so we can add some parameters to our MixIn just like a method, and I define it with a variable just like any other programming language. So let's say I want the size to be variable. All right, so instead of making the font size 20 pixels, I'm going to pass in the value for that and replace my 20 pixels with the variable that gets passed in, right? This is just like a standard Ruby method. I'm passing something in, then I'm using that value as I'm defining this code. So now when I call it, how do you think I call it? Just right here, right? Just like a normal method, I'm going to pass in a value 20 pixels. Let's do something different so it looks 30 pixels, all right? So when I include that, this value here should change, right? Ta-da! Look at that. It's now 30 pixels, and I have a variable method that I could use throughout the rest of my CSS and just call it with a different value, just like a normal method in Ruby. Isn't that cool? You guys are not excited. It's too early in the morning for you or something. It's a Monday and it's 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Jeez.
You take these MixIns out into a separate sheet, call it in, still using the sheet.
So inside that MixIn, do font family, $sign, better.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of ways you can organize these things.
So you don't have to pass that into it. You don't have to pass, because that's a global, essentially a global.
Yeah, that one would be a global, yeah. All right, any other questions? I want to pause for a minute. All right, so we can also start to build up a library of these methods, these variables that I might have. I could put these into a different file. Let's say I have another variable called Courier, and that I want that to be defined as Courier new, followed by just Courier, followed by free mono, followed by mono space. Okay, we'll just do something simple. Let's say I could build up a whole list of all of the font families that I like to style with and put these into a different file. So I'm going to cut these out and create a new file in my Stylesheets folder. Doesn't have a CSS, so I'm going to call it fonts.css.scss. I'm going to paste my variables in here, and I might have a list of 20 or 30 different names that I might have established. And then in my style sheet, to get those in, I use the normal import. I'm going to import the file. Did I put my, where's my fonts? Yeah, fonts. That's all I have to do. Import my fonts. And then inside of here, I can use a variable instead. Let's say I want to change this to my Helvetica. All right, so it knows still that my value is there. It'll import those fonts, and that brings in my font family. Or if I want to change that to Courier and reload my page, now it's bringing in my Courier. So that's a nice way you can start laying out your files a lot like you would programming. I'm going to have all my font variables defined in here, and it keeps it out of my main style sheet. Yes?
Would you do that include, since you're not defining .css or .fcss, does it automatically go for the fcss file?
Yes.
If you had one that wasn't, would it ignore that?
It goes down the line just like other programs. It's going to look for a .scss first, and it's going to compile that in.
Okay.
It's going to compile that file and include it. If it doesn't find that, it'll just import the CSS file. So it'll look for Sassy first and then the CSS second. Yeah.
So what if you have both? Could you force it by putting the extension?
Yeah, you could put the extension on there, sure. All right. There's a lot of other things you can do. There's a whole other set of libraries that you can include, and I don't remember if it's included. It's called Compass. I don't remember if it's included with Rails, so let me pause and figure that out. Okay, so the Compass is not included directly. I'd have to include that in my gem file. I could include, do a gem Compass. And Compass, let's search for Compass is an extension that lets you have some mix-ins that I can use. They're like a predefined set of libraries that I can include in my Sass files and do things like rounded corners that work across all browsers. So I can include these rounded corners. They have some automatic link colors methods, all kinds of fun stuff in here in the Compass side. So,
I love it. Their examples are on that.
of course, most web developers are Mac developers. So,
That is very good.
so you can
Your Windows developing.
you import the Compass library, and then you can use all of these different modules, these helpers that it has, layout helpers, adjust lightness. They have all kinds of fun methods built into it. You can it even has pi, which I'm not sure why I'd ever need pi.
Rounded corner.
And maybe, I guess, that would be really, really pushing it.
You want to create a rounded border around some
I guess.
pie against the dimensions.
Yeah.
To get it out.
It takes care of all the cross-platform for me with the rounded corners. It has some more positions, opposite position. It does some cool stuff with that. So another one that uses this is called Bourbon. Bourbon. And these are another set of MixIn libraries that Sass uses. that lets you have some animations and the border radius. These are all cross-browser platform compatible. So there's some animations. See, it's got a little. It's a weird. I mean, it only works if I'm moving, right? Because it's a animation, but it does some animations. I don't know too many of these that would be useful. Let's see. They're demos. Here's a box shadow, box sizing. Their demos aren't looking very good. Here's a linear gradient.
Which is a solid color right
Yeah, kind of. Well, this is a radial. You can kind of see it on the screen. It doesn't look as good as on mine. It's wider here and it's darker out here. That's a radial gradient. So.
It's very useful because you can't do that natively in CSS.
Yeah.
The gradient.
It's a lot harder to do. So anyway, that's it. Any questions on Sass?